Hi, it's Kianbun. Today, let's talk deep into news that matters to Singapore. So, hawkers are in the spotlight these days. When you think hawkers, you're probably thinking about food prices or how small our portions have become. Turns out there's one other thing that Singaporeans also care about. One big thing that has Singaporeans up in arms recently is that hawkers with stores in NEA kopitiams have to be physically at their stores. So the drama started on 18th of February when a hawker, Mr. Noorman Mubarak, posted on Facebook and he claimed that his heavily pregnant wife was forced to stand at the Nasi Lemak store at Yishun Park Hawker Centre. And by the way, I don't know why all bad things seem to be happening in Yishun, but here we are again. So anyways, he said that NEA or the National Environment Agency had sent his wife a warning letter as owner for not being physically present at the store. And this started a whole chain of discussions on online forums and on social media. 2 days later, NEA responded, and that's when things got interesting. Let's break it down. So it turns out the tenancy agreement signed by Mr. Norman's wife, and in fact all hawkers, states that store owners must manage their stores personally. And the part that Mr. Norman took exception to was the fact that this meant that his wife must be physically present. But does this really make sense? Let me use an analogy. Say I'm a cashier in NTUC and my boss tells me to personally cover the afternoon shift until 7 p.m. If I got someone else to do it, would that qualify as getting the work done personally? Then things got even more interesting because NEA actually also gave Mr. Norman's wife the option of nominating a joint operator or nominee if they cannot operate it personally. And from the communication, it seems that this was not done. So 1 day later, Minister for Sustainability and Environment, Grace Fu, also weighed in and shared that the requirement for owners to operate stores personally was to deter subletting, because that would then drive up food prices. So for those not familiar, say you rented a store for $5,000. When you sublet it, you probably want to make a bit of money off that. So you may sublet it to someone else for say 5.5 thousand, so $500 more. So instead of selling prices that can sustain a 5K rental, you would then have to sell at a higher price in order to maintain the higher rent. So over time, that would drive up food prices and hurt Singaporeans. Okay, makes sense. But if we really want to manage inflation, we have to look at how high rental prices originated in the first place. So the way it currently works is that every month, new hawker slots are released and potential storeholders bid on them. And these bids are only reviewed after the close and the highest bid wins. The system is such that hawkers could win stores at crazy prices, and if they survive 3 years, the rental goes down by half, and if they survive another 3 years, it goes to market price. Honestly, this does not really work because stores will probably close down in months if rental becomes unsustainable. So managing inflation should really not be that much downstream at the subletting level, but really upstream at the point of store bidding. So look, to me, the way I see it, there are rules and regulations that we agree to when we sign agreements. In this case, Mr. Norman acknowledges that the rules are there, but being physically present at the store daily is becoming hard. He claims that he and his wife are working 12 to 18 hours a day for the past 4 years. And look, we can absolutely empathize with the situation. But every other hawker is probably working dog hours and following the rules. So what Mr. Norman has done is that he has essentially decided that the rules don't work for him and his personal circumstances, and is just not going to follow them. And while I agree that his grievance is definitely something that NEA should look at, and something that could be good for hawkers if improvements could be made. But while that feedback is being considered, why does he and his wife deserve special treatment? Also, Mr. Norman claims that he implemented standard operating procedures, SOPs, and used technology to improve efficiency. So to the point where their staff can handle operations while they're remote handling admin and R&D and things like that. So I actually laughed when I read this because look, this is a Nasi Lemak store, right? So what R&D are we talking about? I mean, efficiencies are great, but again, right, to me, these are fun facts because it's not relevant to what we're talking about here. So seriously, just because you do not like the rules does not mean that you get to not follow them. If you want it your way, there are private coffee shops out there that you can explore. And you cannot have it both ways where you benefit from lower subsidized rent, but yet you don't want to follow the rules. So in this case, there was even an option to make this whole thing go away. Just appoint Mr. Norman or the helper actually taking care of the store to be the nominee. And what's odd to me is that Mr. Norman seems to be really vocal, but remained oddly silent on why he cannot complete a simple administrative step of nominating himself or someone. And in fact, NEA has clarified that this option remains open. So turns out some netizens did a bit of deep diving, and they showed that Mr. Noorman allegedly runs around 20 hawker outlets in Singapore. Maybe that's why he couldn't be named as a joint operator or nominee, because his name is already registered elsewhere. And to be honest, if that's true, I'm going to find it really hard to sympathize with him. Because to me, hawkers are single owner operators, and if he is already benefiting from subsidized rates elsewhere, then double dipping will be absolutely wrong. And he also gave feedback discouraging Singaporeans and PRs from becoming hawkers because there is no growth prospect. I mean, to me, the mandate of hawkers, first and foremost, is to provide cheap food to the public. And aspiring hawkers can wet their beak as a public hawker, but as they scale up, they have options in the private sector to grow, like opening your own store elsewhere. And public assets are meant for the growth and success of the people first, and individual ambitions second. And what appears to be happening for some guys is that they are opening franchises in multiple subsidized hawker centers. And by the way, I'm not talking about franchises where each store is run by individual owners, where they pay a franchise fee to the franchise owner, but the individual store owners maintains their own P&L. The type of franchises I have a problem with are those where each store is essentially operated by a single person and all the money goes to that one person. Because imagine, right, if enough hawkers end up being successful franchisees, then what's going to happen is that a public asset is going to be enriching a selected few while creating a huge barrier to entry for new players. So this whole matter really feels like a publicity stunt. I mean, talking about forcing a pregnant woman to work, talking about working long hours, talking about how public hawkers are not designed for growth, really playing up a sympathy card. And honestly, this could be a strategic move. I mean, the squeakiest wheel gets the attention, right? And he has gotten all sorts of people in high places now receiving the feedback in the most dramatic way. So change is heard and maybe change will come. I may not agree with the approach, but that's one way to effect change. But I would be cautious that change may not come in the way that Mr. Noorman envisioned. I mean, there are just so many unanswered questions on how he's conducting business and why he is not taking up the path of least resistance. And putting himself in the spotlight is going to draw scrutiny that may have unintended consequences. So that's all we have today for a Red Dot perspective. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and drop us a sub if you can just to help with the algo stuff. Otherwise, I'll catch all of you in the next episode.